Hello everybody and welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. In today's review we're going to be delving into the world of original television soundtracks once more, as released by Silver Screen. As in today's product review, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the latest series of Doctor Who, being Doctor Who Series 13, the third season of 13th Doctor Adventures, which does of course also go by the name of Flux. Now this original television soundtrack has been composed by Segun Akinola, who does of course also compose the other 13th Doctor series. Doctor Who Series 13 Flux soundtrack is available to order now from multiple different retailers, including of course Amazon, Silver Screen directly, and no doubt a number of others as well. Of course it is available in two different formats, including digital release but also physical CD with the exclusive Revolution disc. Now this is a series of reviews that I've been doing on and off now, essentially since the start of the 13th Doctor era, and I've really enjoyed kind of discussing Segun Akinola's music in isolation from the episodes themselves. So within this review I'm going to be taking a look at the music as well as the physical CD product, and basically discussing what I think of the music, what are some of my favourite highlights, and how it kind of differs from the other Doctor Who composers. So before we discuss the music itself, let's take a look at the physical product. Now this is a really vibrant design that basically celebrates the overall sort of house style, I suppose, that we've seen around the airing of Doctor Who Flux. So we have the inclusion of one of the main pieces of promotional material. At the top we have the 13th Doctor era logo, which is that ever so slightly updated version, which appears to look ever so slightly more embossed, and then just below this we have Flux in a rather similar typeface. Bottom, just for clarity, it also states that Doctor Who Flux is also known as Series 13, and this is the original television soundtrack with music by Segun Akinola, who has of course composed all of the music from the 13th Doctor era. I think regardless of your opinions of the 13th Doctor era, one thing that really has stood out to me is the difference in the promotional material. A lot of these posters kind of go either way. They're either very colourful or incredibly dark, very much like the first Series 11 steelbook, that silhouette of the 13th Doctor. So this design is opting for that more vibrant pattern, so we have these swirling colours almost looking like ribbons surrounding the main protagonists. It looks very cool indeed. I really do like this blend of colour because I feel like it really shouldn't work. So we have this lovely burnt orange background of various shades of reds, orange and yellow, and then we also have these vibrant greens and purples on the ribbons here coming off towards the side behind Dan, which look very nice indeed. Towards the opposite side we have one of the ribbons unravelling into a swirl of colour, perhaps representing the collapse of time that we see throughout Flux and whatever goes on within that series, because I must admit I'm still getting my head around it. The thing that I will say with regards to the 13th Doctor's costume is I feel like within the later publicity material for Series 11 and 12, they really started to get the hang of photographing this costume, as I think within some of the Series 11 publicity material, the costume, especially the coat, kind of just sits there, and it's the way that it is flowing out here into the vortex of those colours and those various different shades of blue. One thing that I also really like with this cover art is I think it would look excellent on an LP cover. Please, Silver Screen, release these soundtracks on vinyl. I believe there is an audience there, because they have recently done the Series 1 and 2 soundtrack reissued on a lovely transparent vinyl. I previously reviewed that. It is a lovely product, but honestly, I think that if they did all of the soundtracks from the very beginning, it will be a really lovely way to celebrate the 60th anniversary, but also be able to reminisce on some of the music scores throughout new series Doctor Who so far. So yes, please Silver Screen, do it. Those of you that like consistency, I do sincerely apologise, because I know this would rub me up the wrong way as well. But with the Series 11 and 12 soundtracks, it was that lovely cardboard kind of design slipcase that seems to be fading in at the minute. This is now back to a regular CD jewel case thing, so it's a lovely plastic. It protects the piece certainly more than cardboard would, but for those of you that like to have them all lined up on the shelf, I imagine this will be a little bit unusual. Said, I think layout-wise, the spine of this CD is very similar to the Series 11 and 12 releases. It's just the fact that it is in plastic as opposed to being a cardboard case. At the top we have the BBC and Doctor Who logos, as well as the title of this series. At the centre, once again, it states the composer, Segun Akinola, as well as stating that this set also features the Series 12 music from Revolution of the Daleks. Overall, the front cover art is really lovely. It definitely stands out. It's incredibly vibrant. So flipping around to the back, we have a continuation of the Flux kind of ribbon breaking design. Time around, the ribbons appear to have an ever so slightly more textured finish, looking really worm-like in design. So let's take a look at how this album is set out. On disc 1 we have Flux Volume 1, which includes the opening title sequence, as well as the first 3 stories. Continuing to move down now onto disc 2, we have the continuation of Flux with Volume 2, featuring chapters 4 through to 6. Finishing off this album, we have the end credits. Probably one of the biggest selling points for this album release in physical form, especially if you are a big Doctor Who music fan, is that this physical release also contains a bonus 3rd disc featuring the music from Revolution of the Daleks, which isn't really a part of Flux. However, it's great to see it included for completeness, I suppose, and I don't believe this is available within the digital format, so this is only available via the physical CD release. So now that we've taken a look at the outside, let's open the CD case up. So this is one of those jewel cases which can be incredibly weak. I'm not personally a fan of CD cases, which is ironic given that I collect loads of physical CDs with Big Finish. It's just one of those things that always seems to be incredibly weak and frustrating and often breaks. So removing disc 1 from the CD case reveals a lovely picture of Carvanista and Bell. I think Carvanista is probably one of my favourite inclusions within Flux, so it's nice to see him represented here. And then flipping around to the back of the CD, we have this lovely artwork, which I love the way that these red arrows from the prison cell actually go onto the back artwork as well. It's incredibly satisfying. So yes, removing this, we have a picture of Jodie Whittaker alongside the main TARDIS team and John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness, the main publicity material for the New Year's Day special. So now taking a look at the CD artwork itself, once again lots of compliments here. I love the way that it is consistent to the cover artwork with that lovely burnt orange background, as well as the continuation of the ribbon design. At the bottom we get all the details, as well as stating the number off to the side, and the main focus character is of course Azua, I do believe her name is. I could never get it right when the series was actually airing, but yes, she's got that lovely vibrant, very alien design. Moving on now to disc 2, continuation of that lovely rainbow design, especially off to the side here. It kind of looks a bit like a kaleidoscope of some description. Very beautiful, and time the main focus character is a rather miserable looking weeping angel. If I remember right, this is indeed the one that is working for the Division or something like that. I do quite like this angel design. I think it looks quite ominous, and the eyes look incredibly soulless indeed. I really like the way that both of the Flux CDs are a somewhat similar colour style, and then you have Revolution of the Daleks, which is a completely different design altogether, to kind of represent that this is a separate TV story. Revolution of the Daleks, I had a little bit of a crisis the other day as I realised how old this story actually is now, because it still feels like it was only yesterday, and it wasn't, and it's quite scary. So you have one of the kind of parliamentary Daleks there with the blue and black colour scheme looking very interesting. I'm still unsure, I think, of this Dalek design, I can't lie, especially given that it now seems to have once again been kind of removed from Doctor Who, very much like the Paradigm Daleks, because we had the return of the bronze ones, didn't we, with the Power of the Doctor and Flux. So again, a quite striking design with that sort of emblem coming from the prison cell, and then we have the titling there at the very bottom. So moving on now to the final component of this physical CD release, it is of course the little booklet that you get with a little bit of information about the series itself. So we have Jodie Whittaker on the front there, on the beach from the Angel story from what I can remember. All I'm currently thinking is what a lovely striking image, and wouldn't it look lovely on the inner sleeve of a vinyl release? Please silver screen, please. Got these lovely bits of block colour which kind of surround each and every page within this booklet, which makes it look quite cool. As per usual with these booklets, I'm not going to really take a look at the inside contents. I'm going to leave that a surprise for those of you that decide to pick up this release. Although what I will do is show a few small glimpses at some of the images, as let's face it, they're on Google. What I will say is I really do like the way that the images have been used. It puts a nice visual element to the entirety of the series, especially when the images are paired alongside the track list for that specific episode. As always, the book starts off with a little introduction from Segun Akinola himself. It would have been nice to maybe hear a bit more from him discussing the actual music itself and some of the individual tracks, as I think that some of the previous booklets did feature this. this, but it is a really lovely portfolio of work, as always with these releases. What we get instead is basically Segun introducing each disc and the tracks within that, so I suppose it is a nice amount of information if you just want something to flick through rather quickly. The booklet ends off with a little thank you message from Segun himself, which again I won't be featuring in this review simply so there's incentive to actually purchase the product. And what I will say is the use of the images within this booklet I think really highlights how visually striking this era of Doctor Who is, especially from a publicity material perspective. I think that a lot of these images look incredibly vibrant, very exciting and quite dramatic, and it's just a shame that when we actually seen the episodes aired, the colouring on quite a lot of the episodes seems incredibly toned down and almost smoky and diluted, which is a shame, especially given how exciting a lot of the pictures within this booklet look. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the 13th Doctor era is Segun Akinola's music compositions. Now, in my personal opinion, some of the most iconic Doctor Who music that I am used to as a fan is the music from Murray Gold. He has without a doubt made a massive impact within Doctor Who history. Segun's music hits a little bit differently to that music. I think that he decides to take a much more subtle approach. The entirety of a 13th Doctor episode is not completely dictated by the music score. Segun's music is much more subtle, much more atmospheric, and subsequently is a much different listening experience, and I personally really like these soundtracks, not because of their association to Doctor Who, but because I find them incredibly satisfying to listen to whilst doing other things, such as studying. I think that they are a really good study soundtrack. In a rather unusual way as well, I've reviewed the Series 11, 12 and 13 soundtracks now as they've been released, and if anything it is the most consistent thing that I've actually reviewed on this channel from the 13th Doctor era, because I stopped reviewing the episodes simply because of the fan reception, and it wasn't worth getting into this very negative, critical environment, because I simply wasn't getting anything out of doing episode reviews, because merely putting your opinion out there caused so much controversy and unpleasantness that I just decided not to bother anymore. So I kind of started to approach the episodes like a more casual fan. But what I like about these is that you can experience the episode a little bit differently by focusing solely on the listening, audible music experience. As I've mentioned within my previous 13th Doctor era soundtrack reviews, the scores of Segun Akinola are absolutely perfect to be productive to. Instantly, the music for the Halloween Apocalypse opens the album, and it is filled with tension using haunting tones and fast-paced beats which gain momentum throughout the tracks. That same constant beat is what I think makes this soundtrack work so well as study music. As with Chapter 2, entitled War of the Sontarans, with tracks such as I Know Where We Are, Segun really uses a wide orchestral range to make the piece feel grand. The entire set of music for this episode captures the fast pace of Flux as a series, making what is probably Segun's most dramatic set of music so far. What I'm already starting to see with this album is that the wide range of characters and environments explored on screen is really being reflected within the score itself. So far, the more ambient tracks are less present, swapped out for more attention-grabbing pieces. Perhaps the more ambient tracks do increase towards the later half of the series, and are more akin in style to the earlier works within Series 11 and 12. As always, the great joy of these releases is hearing the music in isolation from the stories themselves. As I've mentioned within previous reviews, people often joke about how Murray Gold's music was too loud and drowning out the dialogue within certain episodes, but I think for Segun's music it's the opposite. The stories are often edited in a way which I think hides the strengths of some of his scores. I'm Not Giving Up is another great example of a really lovely emotional piece of music. It's funny because as I listen to these scores in isolation, I do start to see certain themes reoccurring throughout the entirety of the album, which kind of represents the relationship of the main protagonists within the series, in particular those small little themes and jingles which resemble the relationship between the 13th Doctor and Yaz, and those threads which are kind of intertwined throughout the entirety of the series. And I think that perhaps within the episodes themselves, that is less clear, again perhaps due to the way that the episodes have been edited, but when you hear the music by itself, I end up respecting the overall album a lot more. The Weeping Angel presence within Flux is superbly presented on Disc 2, with tracks such as You Are Recalled, which utilise some really effective screeching style music. This is possibly the most effective Weeping Angel music to accompany them since their debut within the highly popular Blink, which really plays to that horror aspect. Also a little bit of a special mention to the end of the aforementioned track, presenting the cliffhanger music, which is incredibly dramatic indeed. Now, I don't know about you, but I love a good Doctor Who theme variation, and I love the fact that within the 13th Doctor era, we've seen this era actually go beyond the usual Doctor Who theme. For example, within Doctor Who Series 11, we have the Demons of the Punjab, a very soothing variation of the Doctor Who theme within the end credits, and Doctor Who Flux is no exception. This album features a theme variation which feels much more subdued and haunting. If anything, it's kind of the baseline of the generic themes seen throughout this era, being incredibly stripped back, and as a result it is a really lovely listening experience. And I think it works in particularly quite well because the actual theme tune itself again feels very traditional Doctor Who. It feels like it harks back to the traditional 60s theme, and I think that this version that emphasises that bass line really works effectively. And as with any other 13th Doctor soundtrack, I love the fact that this album both starts and ends with the inclusion of the Doctor Who theme, nicely surrounding the music presented within this album. As we head towards the final of the series, you can certainly feel the tensions starting to rise within the music score. I Can Read Them All to Dust has some lovely, rather surreal effects, almost a little bit psychedelic, and I do love how the tracks almost connect together in design, using some of the same techniques throughout. It creates a rather uniform style for specific stories within the set. Meanwhile, tracks such as The Ultimate Betrayal sound very heroic and dramatic. So now we move on to the exclusive edition within the physical release, and that is the Revolution disc. Naturally, it's lovely to have this for completist reasons, and it kicks off in a really cinematic manner, but also feels rather contemporary in design. I could almost imagine a score like this being a part of a Netflix original series. This is blended nicely with music such as Breakout Ball, which is very soothing indeed. Headphone users should be warned, this era does also like the occasional jump scare within the score itself, which did catch me out on multiple occasions when listening along. Although this disc doesn't necessarily feature music that I'd instantly associate with a Dalek story, it certainly makes me look forward to the upcoming score within the eve of the Daleks release. When listening along to this soundtrack, it made me think that perhaps the music from the 13th Doctor era stands out as different because I could easily see a lot of its scores being integrated into other TV shows that don't necessarily follow the science fiction genre. Its subtle, repeating themes do certainly create its own genre of Doctor Who score, but perhaps such details are overshadowed by scenes and dialogue when on screen. Being able to listen to the music makes me appreciate this style much more. I think that ultimately as well, one of the big problems with Doctor Who music, or not necessarily a big problem, just merely something to live up to, is that Murray Gould as a composer was around for so long. He has shaped new series Doctor Who, and overall I think there was quite a tonal shift when the 13th Doctor came around on multiple different levels, from a character perspective, from a scripting perspective, from an overall visual aesthetic as well. Of course, the series has decided to use different cameras, different colour grading, something of which I'm not much a fan of because it looks very dark and grainy in quite a lot of scenes, so a lot of things feel very different about this era, along with the way that the episodes actually sound. It certainly took quite a lot of getting used to, but I think as we revisit the 13th Doctor era within the future, I think people will certainly start to appreciate it a lot more, in particular this music score, which is incredibly
thought-provoking, I think, overall. I love the way that the composer actually puts almost subtle messages into the music. He continues themes throughout the entirety of the series, and even though we do have these individual tracks in the likes of, say, the Murray Gold era, you instantly have those themes that you associate with the Daleks, the Doctor, the Cybermen, the Weeping Angels. But with the Segun Akinola scores, it generally blends together into an overall package. It's a soundscape overall, a complete portfolio of music rather than isolated music scores.
So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Please do, of course, continue to support the Host Productions, as I do, of course, upload regular Doctor Who reviews from Big Finish audio dramas, action figures, books, and lots of other stuff as well. So I really hope you have enjoyed the review, and I will, of course, see you all next time.